The Casio W217H, people often call this the Casio F91W killer, but does the F91W really need to die? Let's go ahead and have a look at the Casio W217H. Welcome to Sneaky Pete's Product Reviews. The W217H was released in 2018, so it's quite a new watch, all things to consider. The classic F91W was released back in 1989, so what exactly has changed in this 29-year gap? Well, the case size is significantly larger than the F91W, but it's still reasonably small. This one is 41.2 millimeters across and 10.5 millimeters thick, while the F91W is 35.2 millimeters across and 8.5 millimeters thick. Even though it's bigger, this still weighs in at only 32 grams, and it's still narrow enough that it's easily going to slide under any jacket or even a tight shirt cuff. The watch face itself, which is an important thing, is way better than the F91W. They call the W217H an easy reader just because of that large time readout, and as you can see, the physical case looks quite the same. It has the same button configuration, and it also uses a similar sort of a color tone, although the blue is much more prominent on the F91W. The strap on the W217H is very long. This is the longest strap on any of the inexpensive Casio watches I own, and for me I find it just too big. I'm only on the third hole and it almost wraps around kind of thing, but if you have a larger wrist, it's probably going to be perfect. One thing I must say about the strap though is it's very plain, it's very boring. As you can see, it's just a smooth strap with no kind of decorative aspect on it whatsoever, and I find because of this smoothness, it tends to want to pop up a little bit when it's in its buckle. Because it's completely smooth, nothing sort of holding it there, when you're wearing this, it tends to want to do that, pop out a little bit, so you're going to have to kind of settle that down if you don't want it popping up. The backlight on the F91W is kind of a joke. If it's completely dark, you can usually make out the time, but the backlight on the W217H is fantastic. You can make out the time across the room with this backlight. It is super, super bright. One thing that I find interesting about the backlight, though, is when you turn it on, it almost gives the display a negative display kind of a look. Rather than it just illuminating the display with LEDs, it gives it a really interesting look. It's different than the backlight on any of my other Casios, but compared to the F91W, it is miles ahead. On the W217H, you get 50 meters of water resistance. On the F91W, it's only water resist. Some people use theirs for swimming, it's just not designed for that, whereas this one you get proper 50-meter water resistance. It has a very straightforward module, and it has the exact same sort of functions you find on the F91W, but let me just give you a quick tour of exactly what this one can do. Take a look at that watch face compared with the F91W. You can imagine how much easier that's going to be to read on a day-by-day basis. Although the F91W has the watch module closer to the screen, well, there's a gap on the W217H, so that is going to be one factor to readability. Now, going through the actual functions on this module, pressing the left button is the mode button. That's going to bring us to our first mode. This is a single alarm. You can set one time and then you can turn the alarm off or on. Here we can turn on or off the alarm as well as the hourly signal. Now they're both on, now they're both off. However, it does not mute the beep. This is always going to beep when you change between modes. So let's turn that back on. Now you can see I interact with the alarm. When I press the mode button, it goes back to the main watch face. However, you can scroll through, and if you don't interact, you go through all the module settings before you go back to this home face. Now going past the alarm brings us to our stopwatch. The upper left button starts and stops your stopwatch. If you want to do a lap or a first and second place finisher, you're going to accomplish that with this light button here. So it has all the basic kind of stopwatch features that you're going to want to use, but chances are you're only ever, if you do use the feature, use this one here, which is just keep track of a single time, and you're going to reset it by pressing the backlight button. Now we go to our next feature here, and the next feature is to set the time. That's it. It's just a single alarm and the stopwatch, just like the F91W. Now keep in mind, this does not have an auto calendar. The calendar sets February for 28 days, so on a leap year you will have to reprogram this watch. But other than that, that's the watch module. My overall favorite thing about the W217H is the loud alarm. This thing is the loudest Casio watch I own by far. I kid you not, I've had this on the table in a room outside of my bedroom and it has still woken me up in the morning. If this one is on your wrist, I don't think you're going to have any problem with this one waking you up. I've never had a Casio that is close to as loud as this one. It really did surprise me just how much louder it is than this one or any of the other Casio watches I own. My least favorite thing is the strap. I just find it way too boring. It's just so smooth and uninspired. But more than that, it's the fact that it pops up a little bit, especially if you wear this when you're working out at all. It's going to stick up like that the majority of the time. Overall, I find the Casio W217H to be a great larger version of the F91W. The case is bigger and a little bit beefier, which also gives you 50 meters of water resistance, and the backlight is super bright and a marked improvement over the old model. In day-to-day wearing, the bigger time display makes a world of difference and just makes the watch a lot easier to read. Overall, I just think it's a bigger, better version of a fantastic classic watch. Unless you want the smallest sort of size possible, or if you just want to own an F91W because it is classic, I can see getting this one. But if you're sort of comparing between the two, which one is better, I really can't think of too many reasons to get the F91W over the W217H. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and if you're looking to find either one of these watches, you can find them at the links below.